Working. We heartily welcome our today's speaker, AANAND sir, to occupy dais. Request all to please rise for our motto song.
Sutteshu Jagrati Yaesha Sutteshu Jagrati Kamam 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 Pursho Nirvimana Nirvimana Tadel Shukram Tadel Shukram
Please be seated. Ufa video will be played.
Arthashastram, Dharmashastram cha, mean economic principles, Arth, and ethical considerations, Dharma, which are central to the work of accountants. The entire world is deliberating about impact of climate change coupled with disruptions of artificial intelligence. India has given philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam to the world and successfully hosted G20 Summit on this theme and also launched Global Biofuels Alliance. The accounting profession also has an enormous responsibility to guide the work, where accountability meets innovation, so that vision can be converted into solution. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, being the world's largest accounting body after the successful hosting of WCOA 2022 and GLOBAC, proudly presents before the World Forum of Accountants 2025. Where accountability meets innovation for a sustainable planet. The world's brightest minds will exchange insights, explore emerging trends, and unlock the possibilities for the profession, where foundation will be laid to shape the vision for the future of accounting profession. Hosted at Yashobhoomi, the largest convention and exhibition center in the heart of India's capital, New Delhi, inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, is all set to host the congregation of accountants from around the world. And while you're here, experience the vibrant culture and heritage of New Delhi, a city where history meets modernity, offering unforgettable memories.
World Forum of Accountants, an experience of 3 days, insightful discussion, groundbreaking innovations, and unparalleled networking opportunities.
With immense pride, we invite you to WOFA 2025, taking place, happening from January 31st to February 2nd, 2025, at the magnificent Yashobhoomi, New Delhi. Experience 3 days of insightful discussions, groundbreaking innovations, and unparalleled networking opportunities. World Forum of Accountants 2025 is where you need to be, where accountability meets innovation, AI for a sustainable planet. Join us at WOFA 2025 from January 31st to February 2nd, 2025 at Yashobhoomi, New Delhi. For more details, visit wofa.icai.org.
It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, CA Anand sir, who is a partner in AANAND Co. Chatrakant, Chennai, Managing Committee Member in Chengalpet District Branch of SIRC of ICR. He has practiced more than a decade and handled audit of corporate and non-corporate in the field of taxation, central statutory audit of bank, audit of education institution and trust, presented paper in Tambaram CPE Study Circle, Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, T Nagar West Bengal Mambaram Study Circle, Kanjipuram District Branch of SIRC, and various private education institution, college and school and college. Thank you, sir, once again. I request CA Srinivasan sir to present memento to our speaker.
Thank you.
Handed over to the speaker.
And the council resolutions with respect to various regulations and acts which a member should follow. As far as the code of ethics, the new code of ethics is concerned, it is primarily focusing on 5 pillars, which is integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality and professional behavior. If we want to follow ethics, we should see to that it is fitting in these 5 pillars. If it fits, then we are following the ethical standards. Otherwise, we face some threats on that. And the code of ethics doesn't say you should do this, you should not do this. It specifically speaks that you should fundamentally follow these 5 pillars, and if you have any deviation, there are threats which needs to be addressed. These threats, how much you mitigate these threats, then you will fall back into these 5 pillars. That is how the professional new code of ethics stands. Since it is fees related things, I will confine myself to the code of ethics which deals with professional accountants in public practice, and which has certain principles to be followed with respect to fees. Section 410, which deals with professional accountant in public practice, independence for audit and review engagements. This is what the section 410 deals with. From 410, it deals all these, we will see one by one. And section 905, which is also deals with fees, which is also for professional accountant in public practice, but it is independence for assurance engagement other than audit and review engagements. So 410 deals with audit engagements, 905 deals with other than audit engagement. Like that we can, and it is compulsory for the professional accountant in public practice. What is the objective of new code of ethics? It ensures transparency, upholds public trust in for the accounting profession. That is what the primary focus of the new code of ethics. And when it comes to fee disclosures, ICA can monitor independence, ensures the objectivity, ethical complaints in fee arrangement. These are the importance of fee disclosures. And scopes, as already told, it is for members in practice, applies to public accountants. Transparency in fees. When we are talking about fees, the old code of ethics, everybody know that institute has prescribed some minimum fees to be charged. It is a recommendatory in nature, depending upon the class of cities and the various activities. Minimum fees is prescribed by the institute. Apart from that, there are various other things this new code of ethics talks about. The fees must be clear and justifiable, and appropriate disclosure is essential. So whenever any fees is being disclosed in the financials, you should disclose whether it is due to the assurance service or any other service. So the breakup should be there based on whether it is for assurance service or for any other service. And also avoid the conflict of interest. So it is primarily the fee should be agreed between the auditor and the auditee, and should it be documented properly. So there should not be any conflict of interest at a later point of time. When coming to company, it should be approved by the board, and it should be authorized, the board should be authorized to fix the fees, all those things to be taken care. Public trust, and it is for the benefit of safeguarding the stakeholders, and it reinforces the ethical practices. What are the additional requirements when it comes to the new code of ethics? Fees from a single client or a group of clients exceeds a threshold, usually a percentage of total revenue. It has been 15%, it has been marked. If it is more than 15%, as per the new code of ethics, it is the accountant's duty to disclose to the person who is in charge of the governance, say the auditee. The person, the management should know that your revenue is more than 15% coming from their company or from their group. That should be disclosed as per the new code of ethics. Is it possible? I am giving some hypothetical things out of the subject things, whether if we disclose it, how the transparency and how ethical it should be. This is my thought, not in the code of ethics. Say you are saying that to the client, disclosing that your revenue is more than 15% of your total revenue is more than 15% from that particular group. Is that management can have a influence, can influence us in the audit? Is it possible? Definitely, as a S&P practitioner, I have seen if you are more dependent on a particular client, definitely you will try to influence us. So this influence is what the main objective in this fees related disclosures which has been mandated in the new code of ethics. There should not be any self-interest threat or the intimidation threat. These two threats should be minimized as much as possible so that our audit and assurance service will be at par with the international standard. That is what it has been required. So when there is a self-interest threat, say I am disclosing it to the client that I am dependent on more than 15% of my fees is dependent on you, can he influence us? Definitely there is a possibility of him influencing us. So there is a threat on that. We should also consider those threats also, and we should plan accordingly how to mitigate that threat. And contingent fees. This is another area which is already, except at few circumstances, it is in the old professional ethics, it is there. Any fee should not be charged based on a contingent event or a contingent activities that is being done. So fee should not be charged based on a contingent item or contingent say activity that is going to be happen. So this is again, it is continuing in, except on few circumstances where the fee is based on contingent, there is a relaxation when it comes to corporate necessity, when it comes to valuations. All a list of items has been defined by the council. Apart from those things, contingent fees, you cannot charge fees on a contingent basis. Applicability of this, we have seen that it is applies to all professional persons who are in practice. And reporting obligations, specific disclosure is required for audit fees, and specific disclosure is required for non-audit fees, and specific disclosure is required for consultancy fees. And there is always, you can find out that non-audit and consultancy for an audit client you cannot do. So there is a restriction on doing that. And if it is, you are doing that, you have to disclose that what are the other consultancy work or other audit thing, because this is again a self-interest threat or intimidation threat which is we need to address. Say we are going to represent a client for an income tax case. Definitely we will try to safeguard him, which may, which is not, I am not saying it is shall, which may affect the financials which we have already certified. We may have certified which is true and fair, and we may argue in a different manner to safeguard the client in the particular case. So there may be circumstances. That is why in such a cases it is the Code of Ethics says you should refrain from taking those assignments. So whenever there is a self-interest or intimidation threat is foreseen and it is going to affect your independence, definitely you should refrain from taking that assignment. So these are the three types of fees which is disclosure requirements: audit and assurance fees, non-audit fees, and contingent fees. These are to be specifically disclosed in the financials. So when it comes to revenue threshold, as we have discussed, fees from single client or related entities exceeding to 15% of total revenue, consideration period is last 3 years, and reporting obligation is must report to the person in charge in the governance of that organization. So that disclosure is there. There was some modification. I have referred to the GPT version of our CA Institute. It says that there is one clause which says that it should be reported to the institute, but it was subsequently it was removed. So it may creep in a later period. So there may be requirement at a future date for us to disclose if there is any client or group of clients from whom we are receiving more than 15% of the total fees. Another is multi-year engagement. So there is possibility that we may fix fees for multiple years, say 4 or 5 years, and a bulk of fees may be charged for that entire assignment of 4 or 5 years. And this as a self-interest trust, so that has to be addressed properly, and it also requires some additional disclosures in the financials that fees is being fixed for the 5-year block period or like that. You should be disclosing those things in the financials. All these are primarily focused on how we handle that particular client and how independent we are from the client. To judge our independence from the client, all these disclosures are required. Any people who are reading the financials, based on this, they can judge the amount of independence we have ourselves with the client, so that the reliance that they can keep on our audit report is they can judge by themselves. And that is the main criteria in disclosing all these figures. How we can reduce these threats? Again, rotation of senior personnels. So same person, say if he is dealing with the same client, this is why the rotation of auditors has been already becoming mandatory. If your same person is auditing this auditee for multiple years, there is a self-interest that automatically built up. You build up a rapport with the client so that you become so friendly with him, so whatever he says, without your mind, applying your mind, you accept whatever he says. So that acceptance should not be there. There should be always a professional skepticism, whatever information and whatever things he says. So if you should not rule out that professional skepticism. So if we deal with the same client for multiple years, that may creep in. So that threat we should address it properly by rotating the auditors who deal with that particular client. At least if you have a single partner firm or a single proprietary firm dealing with single person, at least you should try to rotate the staff who is dealing with the client, so that that intimidation threat is not is properly addressed with. An internal review mechanism. Another thing is, so there is no other person who can deal with the client due to the say professionalism, in which you don't have any professional staff who can deal with the client in a particular manner. So in those circumstances, to mitigate the threat, what we can do is, whatever work we do, we can ask some other person to review those work. So that way, when the other person reviews, he may come out with some other points or some other things, so that if any points we have missed out or any decisions we have taken based on our the reply which you have got from the auditee, there may be some difference of opinion that may come throw light on us by the other person, so that we can further dig upon those things to mitigate those risks and avoid those threats, so that our report will be clean as per the international standards. And public disclosure, which we have already seen, we need to disclose the fee arrangements and to maintain the transparency. What if we don't disclose? First is our regulator, our parent body, ICA, can initiate disciplinary action against us. This is one. Next is loss of credibility. When undisclosed or misleading fee arrangement can impact our reputation. So if you have not disclosed and at a later point in time comes to the knowledge of the stakeholders, then definitely it will reduce our reputation. Legal ramification, again our regulators are there, NEFRA, SEBI, and these people at a later point in time can levy fine or any legal action can be taken against the person who have failed to disclose, because all these standards which are mandatory to be followed by the members of the institutes, if they don't follow, the regulators have powers to penalize or take legal actions against the members. How to find out? When we normally say to practice the ethics, most of us know by practice itself we are following the ethics. But certain small amendments or some small changes that happen over years, we miss out, because this 15% criteria or disclosure of the fee arrangements, and mostly the disclosures we miss because of the non-review policies. So we don't have a review policy within our establishment that by oversight misses out the disclosure requirements. So to mitigate all these things, we should have an internal policy. There should be a firm manual, which is again mentioned in SQC1, and it is now in the SQM1 also mentioned. There should be a firm manual which says how the structure of the firm, how it should happen, how an audit work should be done and what are the documentation to be maintained and how the review work and other things and how a conclusion has to be made. And after completing audit, what are all the documentation that has to be completed and kept for further review, or it should be completed in all aspects, so that if a peer review comes, that can be serve as a complete documentation which can be shown to them for peer review purpose. And the internal policy should also have a regular review compliance. So once a documentation is over for a particular year, it doesn't mean that we should not go back and see. So when we come across the next year audit or the subsequent year audit, there should be a mechanism to review the previous year working papers or previous year documentation to see to that whether it is in line with the latest things, or if there is any lacuna in that particular previous year documentation, or if something is missed. So all these will throw greater insights in preparing the current year documentation so that the audit quality is improved. And fees, this is primarily we are speaking on fees related disclosure and fees related regulations with respect to. And for tracking fees, we can always have softwares to track fees, and we also should see to that any threshold it is not exceeding. We can have some dashboards to see to that client wise, group wise fees, what is the fees charged, what is the percentage of fees for each group of client or each client. Those kind of insights we can prepare using software so that we will not miss that threshold limit, or we will not overcome those threshold limits. And regular training, of course, regular training of our staff and partners, and meetings among partners and training among staff is a mandatory requirement which has to be done so that these fees related things and other regulatory things are not missed out. And then the same things, comprehensive monitoring strategies should be established within the firm. Reporting mechanism, we should see to that we follow the ICA guidelines and the other regulatory guidelines. And compliance with the revised code of ethics, we have to be very careful. It is a bigger volume book which is also doesn't says you do this, you don't do this, like that, like Chartered Accountant Regulation Act, it doesn't says you can do this, you cannot do this, like that it doesn't says, it gives you a framework. So like if it comes like a framework, it is for us to judge whether we are fitting inside that framework. So many sections are there. Certain sections are mandatory, certain sections are informatory. So we should follow the mandatory sections which are again as per the regular ICA guidelines. It is been bold in bold letters, the mandatory requirements. Other things are in non-bold text, so that we have to follow all those things. Outstanding fees from previous auditor, outstanding fees to previous auditor. Can we take the assignment? Or outstanding fees to us also. We are the continuing auditor. There is 2 or 3 years fees outstanding. Whether we can take up the audit or we can continue as an auditor. For outstanding fees to the previous auditor, specific restriction is there. We should not take up the audit unless and until the fees to the previous auditor is settled. So when it comes to fees to the continuing auditor, what is the stand? What is the stand we can take? What kind of threat it poses? So there is a self-interest threat. So 2 or 3 years fees is pending means we ourselves will say if we complete this year audit and we sign this financials, we will be able to get the old outstanding. So this self-interest, there is a threat upon this. So how we are going to mitigate this? If this self-interest threat is going to affect the quality of our audit, then we should refrain from the audit, we should resign from the audit. This is what the broader principle the Code of Ethics says. So whenever there is a threat is there, we have to assess the threat, how much the threat is going to influence us, how it is going to shake the 5 fundamental principles of audit. If it is going to shake any one of the pillars, the 5 fundamental pillars, then we should refrain from taking this audit. And dependency on client fees. This is that 15% criteria that says. It is not only that 15% criteria, it is 15% criteria, it is specifically mandatorily it says. So if a particular client fees is, you are more dependent on that particular client fees, though it is not within the threshold of 15%, if it is having a self-interest threat, then we should see to that how we are mitigating that threat. So in no way we should compromise on the quality of audit. We should not fall to the prey of the particular client, and see to that our independence is not compromised on the performance of the audit. And another restriction which is already in place is unethical fee sharing. That is, we are not supposed to share fees with any other person except the multidisciplinary firms, where the institute has given relaxations for multidisciplinary firms, where we can form multidisciplinary partnership with our fellow institutes so that we can share fees with them. Other than that, we are not supposed to share fees, or we are not supposed to get a share of fees. Both the way the sharing of fees should not be there. Comparison and undercutting. Another thing which is specifically there in the new Code of Ethics, which is in fact it is not there in the old regulations and act, prohibits fees that are so low they compromise the quality of professional service. So if you quoted a fees which is too low, that will compromise the quality of service, then that is a prohibitory in the new Code of Ethics. And also says a CA must consider the cost of delivering professional competence and due care while setting fees. So when we quote a fees, we should see to that the fees quoted is based on a proper working. What is the number of man hours our staff is going to work, how our partner is going to, how is the review partner is going to spend. All these time factors should be considered, and the fees which is being recommended by the institute has to be followed, and based on that the fees should be fixed. Where are all the disclosures, these fees disclosures are become mandatory? One is with respect to peer review and quality control. In case of peer review or quality control inspection, the fees charged may be reviewed as part of assessing compliance and ethical standards and audit quality. So the peer reviewer can find out whether the fees charged is appropriate with respect to the quality of work which is being done. So that the fees disclosure may be required. And disclosure of client fee structure in cases where there is undue reliance on any single client or single group of client or a free arrangement that can be detected. Both the things can be done when the peer review control comes. And cases of complaint or disciplinary action, when there is any cases or any disciplinary action, then the institute or the regulatory authority can ask for us the fees which is being charged on the particular client. And specific engagements under regulatory requirements, any specific engagement that is done by SEBI or any regulatory, there the fees disclosure will be required. They may ask for us to quote the exact fees. And declaration and ethical standards. Again, what we have already talked about, based on this code of ethics, it is 15%, and if there is a non-audit, audit and other consultancy services, there the fees related disclosure may be required. So documentation and retention. So with respect to these fees related things, the similar documentation which is required for our audit and assurance, the working papers, the fee structures, how we have determined all those things all may be required when it comes for any regulatory compliances when at a later point of time. And guidance for networking firms. When there is networking of firms, and there may be requirement for the fee related disclosures, so that to find out in the total network what is the percentage of fees it is charged on a particular group, at that point you need a fee disclosure requirement across the networking firms. Under the old code of ethics or the old chartered accountant regulations, there were few fee related requirements to be followed by chartered accountants were listed out. One is prohibition on contingency fees, one is restriction on referral fees, next is fee transparency, that is it should be transferred, it should be communicated to the person in charge. Overdue fees, if any overdue fees is there by the previous auditor, that audit cannot be taken. Fee competition, there should not be any unethical competition, so there should not be undercutting of fees. That is what the previous code of chartered accountant regulations. Fees and advertisement, you should not advertise publicly, this is what the fees charged for a particular thing. That is also under chartered accountant regulation, it is banned. And basis of fees, it should be based on the time spent, the complexity of the work and the professional skill requirement. All these things should be the basis of fees. And guidelines on engagement letter. Engagement letter should specifically say what is the scope of work, what is the fee structure, what is the billing terms and engagement. All these things should be clearly spelled out so that there is no misunderstanding at a later point of time. And public sector assignments, it should be based on the tenders, and government audit assignment is based on those fee structure which is been by the regulator or by the government, that is been as per the regulation. This tender whenever this tender is being called out, it is there is a relaxation that you can apply for tender based on the, and you should see to that you are not quoting below the tender amount. That is one regulation which is available. If they say fees is minimum fees, they say 10,000 or 20,000 or 2 lakhs. No, you should not quote anything below that. One more way how we can mitigate that dependence on a particular single group or single client is through, we have already seen the external review or with an internal review process, and by increasing the client base we can decrease the percentage dependent on particular client. All these are mitigating factors, the factors which need to be addressed to mitigate the particular risk of self-interest on a particular client. These are the, and a summary, these are the three basic structures we should remember when it comes to fee-related disclosures. One is to ethical compliances, another is transparency, another is building public trust. So these are the three fundamental things we should remember when fee-related disclosures, which is mandatorily required under the new Code of Ethics, Volume 1. And of course, the existing chartered accountant regulations which deals with the fee-related disclosures, and other council regulations also equally important to be dealt with when in our professional practice. And if any questions, we can deliberate on that.
Regarding contingency, we were discussing, in the case of such a survey, we have to spend much more time than required for doing audit. What is the relevance of that? Right? As we go beyond this, it will take 4 years, 5 years, 6 years.
So the basis of fees determination is, you should have an estimate. We cannot exactly predict how many years it is going to. It is our professional experience should say that this search and seizure case may go for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. Based on our experience, we should judge and we should quote the fees accordingly. There is these kind of contingent things. No, there is, you cannot predict. So of course it is only based on the professional judgment only. Only thing you have to see to that, no, you are not underquoting too much, too low. You are not quoting to get that particular case. எத்திக்ஸை ஃபாலோ பண்ணுறது ரொம்ப கஷ்டம், ஃபாலோ பண்ணிகிட்டே ஃபீஸ் வாங்குறது அதை விட கஷ்டம். ஆனால் வந்து when we wanted to say, நம்ம வந்து சில டைம் வந்து வரும் முன் காப்போம், அந்த மாதிரி litigations nowadays comes from different angles. We cannot predict. Our client will be very cooperative, the bankers will be cooperative, regulators will be cooperative, but the threat will come from some other point. So there are different stakeholders, they say a different saying on the audit report. So then when it comes, when in a particular case arises or when a disciplinary case comes or when some regulators questions us, so now random scrutiny taken by ROCs, some disclosures missed out. So if we say something else, no, the requirement from ROC may be something else. The reply which we give may prompt for some other thing to be approved by them. So there are multiple chances of this kind of threats which is there. So it is always, no, before signing, no, we have to see once or twice, no, we have to see whether we are complying with so many regulations. At least, no, the form should be as clear as what the requirement is there. Any disclosure which require, no, we should not miss out. That way we can reduce. That is why, you know, normally when a partner is doing the audit, it is always advisable to some other to review the work, so that anything missed out can be, the review partner can find out. If review partner, if a single proprietor is no, normally I as a proprietor, what I will do now, when I complete my audit, I keep it aside. After 1 or 2 days, I review again myself, so that the previous things not, I forgot previous things what I have, based on which I have audited. So when I review, no, I review as a separate person, independent person, so that the threat is getting minimized. So like that we can minimize the threat, but we cannot totally avoid the threats. Fees ரியலைஸ் பண்ணுறதே கஷ்டம். அதுலேயும் வந்து டிஸ்க்ளோஷர்ஸு அது அப்படின்னு வரும்போது இட் இஸ் பிகம் ஈவன் மோர் டஃபர் திங்ஸ். And when it comes to the client knows that we are dependent on the particular client's fees, no, then he definitely goes on an upper hand on us. So all those things we should keep in at abeyance and see to that we don't compromise on the professional quality. So that should go on running in our mind. The quality of audit, the requirement of our ICA, the requirement of the stakeholders, the global standards, that should be running on our mind on a continuous basis so that these threats will get mitigated automatically. Any other questions? We can have any other discussion other than the fee related also.
Company audit was completed and
1 second. Speak in the mic.
One company audit was completed and the chartered accountant has charged the bill also, and the statement.
Madam, can you be a bit louder?
Yeah, the audit was completed and but due to some issues, the financials and audit report not signed, and the chartered accountant wants to resign. If it is coming to the another chartered accountant now, they wanted the fees also. That is fully paid because they have completed their work. So what about the incoming chartered accountant? Can the fees be less? Because same year again the audit has to be done. Can the same fees, should the same fees to be charged, or it can be lesser? Will it amount to undercutting also?
That you have to see to that the amount of time, because whenever you are auditing, again audited means if you are freshly auditing only, you cannot rely upon the previous auditor,
Yes,
because he is not going to give any report on
Yes.
that. So you should see to that the number of man hours you are going to spend and other things, you have to fix fees based on that, and also see to that you are complying with the other regulations, whether the previous auditor's fees is paid or not. Because when he has completed, his fees is fixed, his appointment is fixed, he is resigned afterwards due to other circumstances.
Yes.
And also you should see to that in what circumstances he is resigned and whether there is any threat due to that resignations. So you should take care of all these things, then only you have to accept that audit assignment.
But the fees cannot be less, that is.
That depends upon, it can be less.
Can.
It can be less. There is no only thing, no, if somebody says, no, you are charging, you are undercutting, no, then you should be able to prove. That firm may be a bigger firm with multiple partners, you are maybe a small thing, and you may deal with some different methodology in completing the audit with say various tools and other things. He may be doing in a traditional way. All those things depends.
Thank you.
One more thing, when it comes to ethics, studying ethics, volume of books is there, so many disciplinary cases pending, things are there. How can we find out how to search all these things? Here comes our institute's AI, the Ethical Standard Board's ChatGPT. In the presentation which I am showing is prepared by the ChatGPT, and of course along with the help of Copilot. So the question answers, the amount of literature it is giving, it is tremendous. Only thing, we should be able to give a proper questioning the ChatGPT. So if you have anybody of not using the ICA AI tools, kindly start using it. And if you are going for a subscribed version, then you will be able to ask more questions, and you can also have replies at a quicker pace. So the excellent tool has been provided. Of course, it can also draft audit reports. You can draft working papers. It can provide you with so many things. The preparation of working papers is a tremendous work, and if you engage ChatGPT or any Copilot or any other AI tools for that matter, this preparation of working papers is very simple, and it is going to be complete in all aspects.
Available on Institute's website?
Pardon?
ChatGPT available on Institute's website?
I can't hear you, myself.
Available on Institute's site?
Yes, ai.ica.org. It is from there you can click ChatGPT, CAGPTs, and it will go to, you have to get enrolled into ChatGPT. So once you get enrolled, the free version of that will work. 5 or 6 questions, I don't remember, it will allow you to ask per day. So if you want more questions to be added, the Institute GPT per se is free, but the ChatGPT subscription has to be there for you to ask more questions. It is the entire publications comes to the CAGPT first, then only it is getting published in the website. So whatever publications, latest amendments, everything comes in there. And journals, if anybody want to read journals for the past 10 to 20 years, everything has been published there, that you can use of that. Any publications with this, there it is available in the ChatGPT. And corporate law, direct access, indirect access, all notification, everything available. Only thing is you put your questions properly and don't expect that answer will be 100% right. It may give you wrong answer, that we can judge. Any non-professionals who are not dealing with that, if it gives some answers, definitely they will accept it. But as professionals, we are in practice, we can definitely find out whether it is wrong. If it is wrong, if we question it in a different manner, then it will give a right answer. So prima facie, it gives you a disclaimer there itself. You don't depend upon us, the ChatGPT. It gives a disclaimer. But nevertheless, if we ask the question properly, it gives us a proper answers. Since I am completed this, I have to keep you entertained till the next speaker comes. So that's the reason why I am giving some things which I know. Because being a AITT faculty, I thought some throwing on AI will be something beneficial. You can ask any questions if you have anything with respect to AI or anything with respect to technology related things which that may be adopted in a CS office.
It's my pleasure to introduce AANAND sir, who is a partner of chartered account firm located in Coimbatore and also in charge of branch located in Chennai, specialized in direct taxation, assessment procedure and international taxation. Had been a speaker in a various study circle meeting and budget seminar on taxation conducted by ICAI Coimbatore. Is a faculty in ICAI and have introduced the unique technique of visual imaginary through mind mapping and gamification in the subject of income tax. Has authored a comic book named Allegory of Nisha Sebastian on the topic of income under the income from house property in the subject of income tax, which is also listed in Amazon. Thank you, sir. I request C.A. Ramaswamy sir to present the memento to our speaker.
Her name is Lakshmi Panda. So the India's youngest spy. So that's about the story. So again, the story goes like this. So when she was a spy, she told in Manipur where the Britishers are located and what kind of artilleries they have, all the specs has been given. So that's when INA army marched inside. They had a game plan for this. So Britishers were inside a fort and it had 4 entrances as it is. So there was a discussion going on how the attack can happen, Indians can attack the Britishers. This was a big plan going on. So that's when the chief of INA army, he gave a game plan for this. He said, let's say we have 4 entrances. We'll do one thing. From east entrance, let a battalion enter. So from the west entrance, another battalion enter. From the north entrance, another set of soldiers we enter. One by one we'll start attacking. From each entrance we'll start attacking, and once, let's say, the east army has finished their attack, we should throw a let's say a light over the air, and we can understand that the next army can enter. So this is how the plan works. So once the men or women from the east, they travel, they kill people, they threw a color on the air, and the next army from west enters, and once they are finished, from the north enters. It goes like that. So Lakshmi had a doubt. So she asked the army chief saying that, sir, we have left the south entrance. Why don't we attack from all sides parallelly so that we can easily kill the British army? So that's when the chief of army of INA, he mentioned that, imagine like we enter from all entrance, the gunfires will go all around, which means we start killing our own men, right? So that's the risk of entering from all sides. This was one logic. Second logic given by the chief of INA was, he said, when an enemy knows that you're going to attack from all sides, they have no way out. So the way they are going to attack, it's going to be very aggressive than normal days. So therefore we leave one entrance open so that the Britishers can run away through that entrance. So we didn't attack from all sides. Third, the army official also had another something very important in his mind. He said, among the British army, we also have Indians. So we cannot kill our own brothers and sisters in the name of war. So therefore, we'll leave the south entrance open so that when the army soldiers, they run away, the Indians will stay back, and high possibilities they can also become part of INA. So that's how we gathered strength, and in fact, we got independence. So the first independent place was where INA won the battle was Manipur, and that's the story of a great young spy called Lakshmi Panda. So something I started understanding about the networking guidelines, this is something that came to my mind when I was reading this guideline. So probably in the name of competition, we'll think of probably like competing with each other, try getting the best out of it. But the best situation happens when we cooperate, right? So that's something I learned. So cooperation gives a better benefit, and brotherhood, thinking of fellow professionals, like what happened with INA, I think that will give us a better output. So that's where institute guidelines comes in. So they have given three alternatives for networking. So we can form concerns where we can operate with synergy effect, and we can work as one single unit. That's the whole plan of what is called as networking guidelines. To start with, the first guideline or the first alternative which ICA has suggested is something called as alliance. So what happens is, let's say we have 4 concerns. So this is exactly the example given in the guidelines. So imagine there are 4 concerns, namely, let's say it's going to be a concern called, so let's say there is a concern called A, there's a concern called B, there's a concern called C, and there's a concern called D. So what they can do is, imagine these people are either firm or proprietorship. All these people, they can come together and they can be called as something called as alliance. So henceforth this will be called as A, B, C, D and alliance. So that is the first guidelines which is being suggested by ICA. So there are of course forms to be filed right from name application. We have to apply for name, and of course the normal institute guidelines follows that the name should not resemble any other name. It should not be in lines with some religion. It should not be attractive, catchy and all that. So the same naming guidelines apply. So henceforth, as I told you, after the naming is done, and we become an alliance, we can be called as what is called as ABCD. For example, in our example, it's called as ABCD and alliance. What are the benefit of this? So it's something like this. This is something I read from a book called What If, and it talks a bit of physics. I used to flunk in my maths and science. Later on, because of that, I came into commerce. So that's about it. But I had this fascination about reading about what happens there. So there was a very interesting question in the books. What happens if everyone in the world jump at the same time? Will there be earthquake? That is a question which is being asked in the book. Any thought process to it? Let's say someone, entire population on the earth, they gather in one place, they jump. Will there be earthquake? That's the question. So the answer is definitely yes, ma'am. It's a big no. There won't be any kind of earthquakes. The reason for that, they gave 2 reasons. Number one, the weight of the earth will be higher than the cumulative population we have. This is one. Second thing, when we jump, the probably and the other one, it will get spread out. So adanala, there won't be any kind of earthquakes. It's the logic behind it. Similarly, alliance work in similar fashion. What happens is, let's say the entire population, it can be, in case of alliance, they also say non-CA can also get in. For example, let's say we have engineers and we have chartered accountants, we have lawyers. So what happens is, they can create what is called as an alliance. We get together and it shows synergy. So we have people from multidiscipline, and we approach a client, we can say that we are from so and so alliance. So it's, let's say, ABCD and alliance. So what happens is, the client will know that we have so much expertise and so much resources. With that, we can take an audit. So what is not allowed while getting into the alliance part? First one, the common rule is, of course, yes. One of something which is very complicated to understand is a neuron, right? So it connects and we remember a lot of things. So similarly, there should be not any kind of neuron connectivity here. In the sense, if you are part of one alliance, you cannot get into another alliance. So let's say ABCD alliance is one concern, it's an alliance company, and let's say we have XYZ as another alliance company. This cannot synerge, so that is not allowed. So once you are into an alliance, you fall into one alliance. You cannot diversify and get into multiple alliances. So this is something which is being told. So what is not to be done, or what cannot be done when you get into alliance? Number one, alliance cannot take audit by itself. So let's say we have ABCD alliance. So it's basically synergy. Multiple people, they join together, and it's an alliance. So what cannot be done is, I cannot take an audit in the alliance name. That is strictly not allowed. Second thing, let's say A is a firm and B is another firm which is part of the alliance. If A is the statutory auditor, B cannot be internal auditor. That is not allowed. So as we all know, it becomes a conflict of interest. So in alliance, what happens is that we function as individual we perform as individuals only, but we get the benefit of synergy out of it. That's the whole point here. So A practices individually, B practices individually, C individually, and D individually. But while going for an audit, we'll project ourselves as an alliance. We get the audit in the individual name, but we'll be an alliance. So in the sense, audit will not be assigned in the alliance name, it will be assigned in the individual concern's name. So that is something about what is called as alliance. The benefit of it, of course, we get the branding benefit. Of course, pooling of resources are all the benefits which we get here. So second is about what is called as network. So imagine, this is again a very interesting fact. I was reading from a book called Power of Trees. Again, I believe it's a great book to read. Reason for that, so as our Honorable Finance Minister told, we should also think of environmental audits as the next big option. So India becoming third in the league very soon. So I think carbon taxes and all that will be another factor we have to think on. So yes, so this book entirely talks about trees and how it works. So let's say there is a standalone tree like this. So generally what happens is, tree in order to survive, they absorb the water from the land, and photosynthesis happens, they get light, they get food and all that. So once they are devoid of this water, the leaf starts falling, so the chlorophyll is taken away from the leaves and leaves starts shedding, and finally there is a slow death to the tree. But this is not the case in case of forest. So what happens is, let's say one of the tree is falling short of nutrients, foods and all that, so there will be another tree coming to its rescue. So they communicate by way of something called as, so there is a symbiosis below the soil. They communicate with each other, which is called as soil fungi. So that's a mechanism what tree uses. In fact, a wonderful fact about tree is, let's say there is an insect which is sitting on the leaves of the tree and it's eating the leaf. I mean, if at all we think, will the leaves allow? Saying that can the insect eat the leaf, will it actually allow? The answer is definitely not. Tree could a living being, so it won't allow. So what happens is, it emits a chemical which is called as tannins. With that, the leaves get bitter. And not only that, the tree also communicates to the other members of the tree saying that, hey, there is an insect here which is biting me. You be careful. The other trees in the row also will emit a chemical called tannins, and the leaves actually become bitter. So in fact, one tree starts saving all other trees in the row. So that is something called as a network. And the WWW, which is called as World Wide Web, started with one of the concept of origination of WWW was this, which is called as Wood Wide Web. So it starts from the wood. The trees communicate among each other, and that's one of the thought process how WWW came into the picture. So that's about trees. So the second thought process of ICA guidelines is something called as network. So what is a network and how different it is from alliance? So alliance is something like, as I told you, individual people, they don't have a protocol, they just share the synergy they have among themselves. The second thought process is network. So now what happens here is, let's say we have A, B, C, D, the same concerns, naming them A, B, C, D. So they are firms. Now what happens is they come together and they form a network. And henceforth they are called as, let's say, A, B, C, D and network. So that is the next model. So they are called as A, B, C, D and network. What happens here is, there are internal agreements to it. A, B, C, D, they will have an internal agreement which is signed among themselves. For example, A can say that I'll take care of all transfer pricing matters, and B should not compete with me. And B says that I'll take all regulatory matters and I should not compete with rest of the people. So likewise, there are agreements signed in place, and specific assignments happen to the respective people, and it's called as network. And again, what cannot be done here? Number one, non-CS cannot enter the network. As in alliance, we said that alliance can have other professionals also, but networks cannot have other professionals, so that is strictly prohibited. So only CA can be part of the network. This is one. The same rule applies when you are into one network. we cannot get into other networks. Again, it will become conflict of interest, so that is not allowed. So will there be any kind of reconstitution exits? Is it allowed? The answer is yes. So once you enter, you can softly leave. Once you find it's not so attractive, you can definitely leave. So that's about what is called as network. The second thing, as normally told, the branding effect you get. So you come together and you create a brand. So that's the next thing. So the next question that happens is, can we take up audits here? The answer is no. Non-audit task, yes, we can take, but audit cannot be taken in the name of network. So this is number 2. So that sums up what is called as network. Yes, ma'am.
So network, is it not like alliance where the independent partner firms of the network can take orders in their name instead of the network?
Yes, scorrect, ma'am. Same thing, exactly the same.
As an alliance, this is also possible in network.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And you said you designate this firm will do audit, this will do
Correct.
taxation. Can that be done in alliance also, where they can designate amongst the alliance firms where which firm will do what work? As if they are good at audit, they will take up all audit related. If the alliance pitches in for that, one firm will take taxation, one firm will take like that.
There are no definite agreements in case of alliance, ma'am. That's a whole difference between network versus alliance. So networks, we have definitive agreements where we know what we are going to do and what will be a violation and what happens next. Alliance, it's just that we want to show that synergy. That's the whole point there. So mainly in case of empanelments, of course, yes. So the empanelment rules holds good. But however, when we project as an alliance, there is a weight assigned to it. That's the whole point the institute is trying to drive away. Yes, ma'am. So thank you for that, ma'am. Yeah. Anything more at this juncture? So anything more to be asked? So I'm just proceeding with the next one. So the next among the aspect here is called as lead. So that's the next thought process here. So in broad sense, what happens is institute had only 2 approaches initially. Just 2021, they had just 2 approaches. One approach was called, as I told you, it was called alliance, and the second approach was called network. These were the 2 approaches. So network is further divided into 2 parts. One is called as the normal network, which I told you, firms get together, they form a network. The second network is called as a lead network. So what happens here is, imagine something like this. For a change, with your permission, I just wanted to play a video for you if it's perfect. Of course, many of us would have watched this movie either in our childhood times or recently. So this is a video.
Tabus krak koi kinim bomla mohino suku lohakwe ulukasta minu bizra rukwe min bahatte zaratrama mais prekim brinsa kinim min mahatti chuhor rot namata shwikite ta
So that's from Bahubali, as we all know. So the reason why I played this is it's a very something very interesting I read. It's from a book called Talking Book. It's about how languages originate, and this scene especially, in fact, the language they spoke is a registered language. It's called Kiliki. That's the name of the language. And any CS wanted to add some language to your list, you can try this. So it's a registered language and you can learn Kiliki. That's about it. So something about this person called Bahubali, a very, very fascinating person. So in fact, there is a series about Mr. Rajamouli in Netflix. And when I started going through this series altogether, I was able to see that Rajamouli is the director there, and of course Keeravani sir is a musician. He's also part of the family. Rajamouli's wife is into designing, and Rajamouli's sons and the family members are into production. So what happens is his entire family is performing as a unit, and they make movies and blockbuster hits. That's how Rajamouli actually is functioning. But individually we won't know Rajamouli, or let's say Rajamouli's wife, or let's say Keeravani sir. We know them as Rajamouli Productions. So this is a concept called lead firms. So what happens is something like this. So let's say I'll quickly narrate what happened with Bill Gates once again. So in fact, IBM was a company which initially partnered with Microsoft. Microsoft didn't have a standalone functioning, so they started making operating systems for IBM, and that's how Microsoft became like well known. So what happens is I don't sell Microsoft standalone. I bundle up and sell it along with IBM. So entire contract is taken in the name of IBM, and then the contract is spread across to various companies like, let's say, Microsoft or rest of the companies. It's getting spread across. So that's something called as a lead network, and in this mechanism we can take audit in the lead network name itself. So for example, imagine like we have a firm called four firms once again, like A, B, C, D, and all these are individual firms altogether. Now all the firms decide, saying that based on vintage, based on let's say the number of clients, based on experience, we could say that we are choosing A as a lead firm. So now what happens in this entire network, this network will be named after the lead firm, which is A, and A will become the lead firm. Now what happens, A will take the audit and it will start giving the audits to other members of the network based on the agreements they have signed with each other. So this is called as a lead network, where we can take audit in the lead network name itself. So the first point of difference between the alliance, we cannot take audit in its in the alliance name, we cannot take an audit. Let's say the network model, we cannot take an audit, but lead network model, we can take an audit in the network's name itself. So these are the points to be mentioned, right? And again, in lead, yes ma'am, yes ma'am.
How different is the lead network from a merger? Like all A, B, C, D, B, C, D merges with A, is it tantamounting to that in a lead network?
Okay, so technically, any point of time, these people can exit. So that's the whole thing. Merger, the entity is seen as one. So here there are four separate entities. We can say it's kind of a joint venture. So we can equate it to a joint venture. Any point of time, these people can exit.
Can have their own audits.
Yes, ma'am. They'll have their own audits. Yes, that is well allowed. Well allowed. Yes, ma'am. But again,
They can choose to take an audit in the name of A
yes.
or in their own name.
Yes, that is allowed. Again, we should ensure that the conflict of interest does not happen. So if I'm some person here is internal, the other person cannot be statutory. That's always there. So that's about the lead network. And again, in the recent times, there has been contemplation with, by 2024, the next draft came up. So this was about LLP. So in the previous aspects, LLP in a big way was not covered. Reason for that, when you talk about, let's say, network, lead or the normal network method, so only chartered accountants can be part of it. That's the whole point. In case of alliance, yes, so we can say that even non-CAs can be part of the bigger alliance, that is well valid. So in case of LLP, what happens, it becomes a multidisciplinary firm. So even engineers can be part of LLP, so that is always there. So now what happens, whether LLP can become part of the network, that clarification came very recently. Yes, they have reviewed it, and even LLP can become part of the network. That's the third approach which they are talking about. But the condition what they are mentioning is, LLP should have minimum 50% chartered accountants inside. So when you talk about the total partnership strength, at least 50% should be chartered accountants. That's the first rule when you want to get into network. That's the first one. Second thing, in this case, right, in case of, let's say, lead network, we know that the network will be assigned, the lead network will be assigned the audit and will get spread across. What happens to its constitution? It becomes a AOP, Association of Persons. So in case of lead or in case of the network, we form an AOP, and the AOP will be, in case of lead network, the AOP gets the audit, it starts distributing across the firms based on the agreement. This is about the lead network part. What happens with LLP model? So LLP, as I told you, like minimum 50% strength should be of chartered accountants. And the next thing, what it does is, let's say we have 4 LLPs here, A, let's say B, C and D. There are 4 LLPs altogether. They have to form a new LLP. So that's about what is with the LLP guidelines. A new LLP will be formed. So for, say, example, A, B, C, D LLP. So this is what we form. And in this LLP's name, you can take audit. So that is well allowed. So, in a broad way, if you think, alliance, just you want to get the synergy out of it, and you don't want to get audits in the concerns, I mean, or the AOP's name. There is no AOP there. So you just get the name and you get the name, you get contacts through the lines. That is the first approach. Where
It's not constituted into any form like a partnership or an
no, ma'am. No, we get the naming, yes. So we just become an alliance there. That's it. Right. So whereas network, we form a constitution called AOP. We'll get the if it's a lead LLP, we get the audit. If not, we cannot get the audit. In case of LLP, yes. So we can get the audit in LLP's name. Again, when you talk about LLP, it's divided into two categories. Same as network. One, you get the normal LLP where we get the audit. Let's say ABCD can form an LLP. They can take the audit and run the audit. This is option one. Or they can exercise option number two. So A can become the lead LLP. That is equally valid. Okay, A becomes the lead LLP. A takes up the audit in the name of A LLP and it starts distributing across other LLPs. So that's about what happens with the networking guidelines. So any doubts till here or this stage?
networking also, it's not an AOP.
Networking, yes, ma'am. So what happens is networking, we create a AOP. Reason for that, since we have to create drafts by which we have to assign which audit to what firms it should flow. So yes, it will be formed as a AOP now. Yes. So any doubts till this stage? So I'll just throw a light upon the forms which are being used. So certain questions that can come into pictures, can a foreign concern become a part of network? So let's say a CPA can get in, right? So that is, again, it's not allowed. So they say it's clearly CA should be part of it. So that is always there. So foreign concerns, they won't be able to get in. So this is about it.
They can get into alliance?
Yes, ma'am, they can get into alliance. Yes, so that's valid. So these are the forms which are being mentioned. So first we use a form A. So this is for approval of name of the alliance. So the same guidelines as we follow. So it should not be like carrying name of similar firms, or it should not be against the institute naming guidelines. So that is that. Of course, we have to mention the address, and yes, so the respective firm registration number should be mentioned. So we can say that we'll be getting trade names, right? So as a proprietorship, can proprietorship be part of alliance or network? The answer is yes. So proprietors can be part of alliance or network, but they should have the FRN. So the registration number should be there. So we should register for a trade name. So in case of auditors having trade names, they can do this. So that is well valid. So first is a form for name application. So the second thing comes as so application for registration of firms. Once the name is obtained, we go for registration. So again, we proceed with the registration part. So once that is done, in case there is a change in constitution, let's say a firm is going out or a new firm is getting in, so there is a change in constitution, we bring form C to it and we file it. So this is a broader picture of what is called as the network guidelines in a big way, because it's actually like I could say that it's very few pages. In fact, it's 36 pages here and 15 pages for the LLP. So this sums up the entire gamut of it. So any doubts, if you have, like, we can have a very interactive session. So even I'll get to know something new out of it, and you can equally know. This concept was entirely new to me, to be frank. So I took time last 2 weeks to read these guidelines. But in a nutshell, this is what it says. But in case if you have any specific doubts or discussions on this, you can please throw a light upon it.
Can you give some practical examples?
With respect to network, right, ma'am? So yes, ma'am. So
Has CA firms in India started doing?
CA firms firms in India started doing it. To be frank, ma'am, I'm not aware of it. It's whether done or not, I didn't research on that part. My bad, I didn't do it. Yes, so whatever I told you as an example, that the ABCD example is what Institute has equally given. So ABCD and network is something what we can name it. So that's the practical side to it. Yes.
Empanelment, yeah, so the CNAG and banks are allowing network firms to be empaneled?
Yes, ma'am. So I could say that the lead part, right? The lead firms can get empaneled. That won't be a problem. LLP model, which is very recent, that can get empaneled because we have a constitution in place and they have a right to empanel. But the normal networking method, right, where we just have an AOP and we cannot take the audit in its name. So alliance and the normal network model, we cannot go for empanel.
But the member firms can get empaneled?
Yes, member firms can get empaneled, ma'am.
Because we have some empanelment conditions would not consider a partner being a partner in more than one firm.
Correct.
So these people are together in one particular network. Will it be considered, those partners be considered of those independent firms eligible partners, or it will not give them the...
Yes, ma'am. But so what the guidelines have provided is, so I'll show you that, ma'am. Yeah, so Institute has mentioned that they will make efforts in pushing those empanelments. So this is what, like, literally they have mentioned. So ICA will put efforts to secure recognition of combined strength of resources. So yes, Institute will definitely rightfully ask question, because bank, if I'm partner of a firm and apply in my individual capacity, I won't, in most of the cases I won't get the audit. But yes, Institute commitment is always there to always project that combined strength, because it's a guideline given by them. So I think more or less definitely we'll be getting that audit part, yes. And second thing is, what I believe is here, when you talk about lead firm, so just the lead firm will go for empanelment, not the member firms in that. So it's only one firm going for empanelment. So I think that will be taken care of. Yes, ma'am. So anything more to be asked? So you can please share your thoughts. Yeah, and of course the registration part, yes. So once we get a registration of alliance, we'll get something called as ARN. So instead of FRN, we get something called as alliance registration number. So in case of network, we get NRN, so network registration number. So that's what is told.
So peer will be for this network lead firm or the other four firms?
You're talking about?
Peer review.
Peer review, okay. Peer review condition per se, it's not there in the guideline, ma'am, but in case a peer review is made, so in case if there is a constitution like LLP, so LLP will be subject to it. Sure. Thank you so much, friends and colleagues, for the, friends and members, for the great opportunity given. So I humbly thank and thank the Institute and all members of the Institute for providing this golden opportunity. Thank you. Thanks.